আর আমি এটা রেকর্ডিংও তোমায় পাঠিয়ে দেবো, আজকে রাত্রিতেই রেকর্ডিংগুলো পাঠিয়ে দেবো। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে, যতগুলো সম্ভব সব কটা পাঠিয়ে দেবো আমি তোমার। আচ্ছা, ফার্স্ট অ্যান্ড দ্য ফরমোস্ট থিং যেটা আমরা করব সেটা হচ্ছে আমাদের 7 to 9 চ্যাপ্টার হয়ে গেছিল তো, হয়ে গেছিল তো 7 to 9 চ্যাপ্টার গুলো। আচ্ছা, তাহলে আমরা এখানে, হ্যাঁ, 6 চ্যাপ্টার দিয়েছে, নেও মাই, আমরা আরম্ভ করছি। দ্য হ্যান্ডমেডস টেল আমরা আরম্ভ করছি। এই যে থার্ড এপিসোড, খুব মন দিয়ে শুনবে, বিকজ এখান থেকে you might have to face some new situations and new conditions, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Hmm. This much I can tell you. You have to remember names. Here the names are very important to remember. Now at night, Offred likes to remember her former life, as all handmaids are. After who are handmaids, they are prostitutes. And they keep enjoying the lives of their commanders whose wives are not satisfying to them. So at night, Offred likes to remember her former life. She recalls talking to her college friend Moira in a dorm room, means dormitory room. She remembers being a child and going to a park with her mother where they saw a group of women and a few men burning pornographic magazines. These were not allowed. Alfred has forgotten a large chunk of time which she thinks might be the fault of an injection or pill the authorities gave her. So she remembers waking up somewhere and screaming, demanding to know what they had done with her daughter. The authorities told Alfred she was unfit and her daughter was with those fit to care for her. They showed her a photograph of her child wearing a white dress, holding the hand of a strange woman. As she recounts these events, Alfred imagines she is telling a story to someone, telling things that she cannot write down because writing is forbidden. So here I would like to believe this is a story I am telling. I need to believe it. I must believe it. Those who can believe that such stories are only stories have a better chance. So when we go to the next chapter, returning from another shopping trip of Glen and of Fred, be very careful of the names. Notice three new bodies of on the wall. One is the Catholic priest and two are guardians who bear placards around their necks that read gender treachery. This means that they were hanged for committing homosexual acts. Homosexual acts. So after looking at the bodies for a while, Alfred tells of Glenn that they should continue walking home. They meet a funeral procession of Econo wives. Who are these Econo wives? The wives of poorer men. One Econo wife carries a small black jar, and from the size of the jar, Alfred can tell that it contains a dead embryo from an early miscarriage, one that came too early to know whether it was an unbaby. So the Econo wives do not like this handmaid. One woman scowls, and another spits at the handmaids as they pace. So you see, the handmaids, they give physical enjoyment to the commanders, but how they look down upon. Ogwen says under his eyes, The Orthodox goodbye, hesitating as if she wants to stay more, but then continuing on a stay. When Alfred reaches the commander's driveway, she passes Nick, who breaks the rulers by asking her what about her walk. She says nothing and goes into the house. She sees Selene Joy. Selena Joy is her name actually. Later you'll come to know about this woman also a lot. Selena Joy out in the garden and recalls how after Selena's singing career ended, she became a spokesperson for respecting the sanctity of the home and for women staying at home instead of working. Selena herself never stayed at home because she was always out giving speeches. Once, Alfred remembers someone tried to assassinate Selena but killed the secretary instead. Alfred wonders if Selena is angry that she can no longer be a public figure now that what she advocated has come to know pass and all women, including her, are confined to the home. So the women did not enjoy the freedom of movement, the freedom of choice, the wishes that they cherished their mind. In the kitchen, Rita, another girl, fuses over the quality of the purchase as she always does. Alfred retreats upstairs and notices the commander standing outside her room. He is not supposed to be there. He nods at her and retreats. So when we go to the next chapter, we will find that the commander is waiting for her to take her for his enjoyment, physical satiation, or not, something like that. Alfred remembers renting hotel rooms and waiting for Luke to meet her before they were married. Because she married Luke. But where is Luke now? She doesn't know. But he's here, she knows it very well. When he is cheating on his first wife, Alfred regrets that she did not fully appreciate the freedom to have her own space when she wanted it. Thinking of the problem she and Luke thought they had, Alfred realizes they were truly happy, although they did not know it. So the happiness of a man and a woman is also a closely guarded secret. She remembers examining her room in the commander's house little by little. After she arrived, she saw stains on the mattresses left over from long ago sex, and she discovered a Latin phrase freshly scratched into the floor of the closet. So, no light to bastardess corborandorum. No light to bastardess corborandorum. Alfred does not understand Latin. It pleases her to imagine that this message allows her to commune with the woman who wrote it. Alfred pictures this woman as freckly and irrelevant, someone like Moira. Later, she asks Rita, who stayed in a room before her, একটু দরজাটা বন্ধ করো. Rita tells her to specify which one, implying there were a number of handmaids before her. Alfred says, guessing, the lovely one with the freckles. Rita asks how Alfred knew about her, but she refuses to tell Alfred anything about the previous handmaid beyond a vague statement that she did not work out. So you see, All that we learn from the story is a vague idea, not a very proper idea of the existence of these handmaids. So Atwood suggests that those who seek to restrict sexual expression, whether they are feminist or religious conservatives, ultimately share the same goal: the control of sexuality, particularly women's sexuality. In the flashback to the scene from Opret's childhood, in which women burned pornographic magazines, Atwood shows a similarity between the extremism of the left and the extremism of the right. The people burning magazines are feminists, not religious conservatives, like the leaders of Gilead, yet their goal is the same: to crack down on certain kinds of sexual freedom. In other words, the desire for control over sexuality is not unique to the religious totalitarianism of Gilead. It also existed in the feminist anti pornographic crusades that preceded the list of the fall of the United States. Gilead actually appropriated sorts of the people's rhetoric of women's liberation in its attempt to control women. Gilead also uses the aunts and the aunts rhetoric, forcing women to control other women. Again and again in the novel, the voice of Aunt Gilead, Aunt Lydia, I should say, not Gilead, Aunt Lydia, not Gilead. I shouldn't say Gilead, then of course I'm wrong. Rings in Offred's head, insisting that women are better off in Gilead, free from exploitation and violence, than they were in the dangerous freedom of pre-Gilead times. So we find that in chapter 7, Offred relates some of the details of how she lost her child. This loss is the central wound on Offred's psyche throughout the novel, and the novel's great source of emotional power. The loss of their child is so painful to Offred that she can only relate the story in fits and starts. So, for the details of what happened, have happened, murky. So, when telling stories from her past, like the stories of her daughter's disappearance, Offred often seems to draw on a partial or foggy memory. So, it almost seems as if she is remembering details from hundreds of years ago, although we know these things happened in a few years before the narrative. So, partly this distance is the product of emotional trauma. Thinking of the past is painful for Alfred, but in chapter 7, Alfred offers her own explanation for these gaps. She thinks it possible that the authorities gave her a pill by or injection that harmed her memory. Immediately after remembering her daughter, Alfred addresses somehow. She calls you. She could be talking to God, Luke, or an imaginary future reader, as she says. I would like to believe this is a story I am telling. Alfred says those who can believe that such stories are only stories have a better chance. The story is a letter. Dear you, I will say, in this act of telling her imagined audience about her life, Alfred reduces her life's horror and makes its oppressive weight endurable. Also, if she thinks of her life as a story, and herself as the writer, she can think of her life as controllable, fictional, something not terrifying because not real. So we learn in chapter 8 that Selena used to campaign against women's rights. This makes her a figure worthy of pity in a way, and supported the anti-Roman principles on which Gilead was formed. But once they were implemented, she found that they affected her as well as other women. She now lives deprived of freedom and saddled with a handmaid who has sex with a husband. Yet Serena forfeits what pity we might feel for her by her callous, petty behavior towards Alfred, powerless in the world of men. Serena can only take out her frustration on the woman under her thumb by making their lives miserable. In many ways, she treats Alfred far worse than the commander does, which suggests that Gilead's oppressive power structure succeeds not just because men created it, but because women like Serena sustain it. No light to bastardess corborandorum that was written on the floor in Latin. The Latin phrase crude in Alfred's closet by a previous handmaid takes on a magical importance for Alfred even before she knows what it means. It symbolizes her inner resistance to Gilead's tyranny and makes her feel like she can communicate with other strong women, like the woman who wrote the message. In chapter 29, we learn what the phrase means and its role in sustaining Alfred's resistance comes to seem perfectly appropriate. So we see complications a lot in the story, and yet you cannot just take it for granted that what has been said in the story is from the Gileadian point of view, the culture of that state, of the society that they belong to. Here we will end this part of the portion of the chapter, and we will start anew. And automatically